Hey, it's Greyson again. Welcome to another installment of How to Be a Better Amberlynn Reid Haydur. I'm gonna call this one From Off Track to On Track. And today I'm gonna go over the 4 places that you can come from in really arguing or negotiating in any sort of complex behavioral situation when you're looking for behavioral change. These things don't just apply to Amberlynn Reid, in my opinion. I think they apply to a lot of other things. In fact, I was motivated to create this because of something that happened in my own life where I kind of made a fool of myself. So my loss is your gain in that regard. So what are these 4 key principles that we want to look at, the 4 key places that you can come from in making change, and how do they apply to Amberlynn Reid? Okay, so the 4 places are going to be facts, opinions, positions, and directions. These are all different places where you can originate an argument in favor of or against Amberlynn Reid from, or initiate a rhetorical process to help change her behavior. And when I talk about rhetorical process, that means anything from direct messages, comments on our YouTube channels, rhetoric surrounding things like unsubscribes, all those kinds of levers that we have in our arsenal to deal with a situation where we're trying to change behavior. So let's start with the first one. The first one is, I would say, the number one most common place people start out with when making an argument or a rhetorical process toward behavioral change vis-a-vis Amberlynn Reid, and that would be facts. And this is basically where you just say something that is true, and that can be proven rather objectively. Like, Amberlynn weighs 566 pounds. That means she is morbidly obese. Because she is morbidly obese, studies show that results in her having a higher risk of mortality, and it's such a high risk that she is dangerously close to having those types of serious health problems. And even though it's essential to have facts in this type of process, it's absolutely indispensable in most cases. This is actually the weakest position to start an argument from. And you can actually tell that. We kind of know it instinctively, because usually the types of people in like the online weight loss community or whatever that try to bring up facts, they usually do so in a very oppositional and confrontational place. And that kind of, to me at least, I see that as being an expression that you're a little bit scared. And a lot of times it makes it sound like you're talking down to the person, because if you're saying it and you're repeating it and you're emphasizing this point, you're kind of sort of sounding like you're assuming that they don't know that. They meaning the other side, meaning Amberlynn in this case. So even though it sounds really good and it probably kind of feels kind of good to say, these are the facts, these are the facts. I'm not going to name names here, but there's some people that just be like, that's facts about your weight. Those are the facts about your weight, and that it's going to hurt your health and all that. Even though that might sound good, feel good, seems like an area of strength, and that's why you feel like you're exuding that strength in that rhetoric, it really isn't, because it makes it sound like the other person doesn't know that, and it makes it sound like you are just trying to impose your own will straight up, just based upon something that is already known and has, in the mind of the other side, already been taken into account in their own calculus. All right, so the next part, and this is where I started to kind of get a little bit deeper into this with my own little personal situation, is opinions, and you can also put sentiments in this. Opinions and sentiments are what you or the other person thinks of the facts or of the situation, how they feel about it. Now, if you look at somebody's sentiment, like if you look at how somebody feels about their situation, like in Amberlynn Reid's case, how she feels about not being able to visit her mom, and then you go from there and you're like, okay, you feel like you can't visit your mom, you feel sad about that, you feel this emotional feeling. So now let me come in and tell you, you better get yourself into inpatient treatment, or you better start depriving yourself right away. Just start going on that 900 calorie, low calorie diet, whatever happens to be the trend in the Amberverse at the time. That comes off as manipulative, pushy, and kind of salesman-like. And you can also sound like you're a little bit uninformed if you're just coming straight from the opinion into a conclusion, because you wind up sometimes actually losing the facts part of it. And again, all these different components that I'm talking about here are useful and they build up to something, but you just don't want to launch from them prematurely. And in my case, where opinions became very useful is because I sometimes get like bouts of like a lot of fatigue and stuff like that, and a family member who I really appreciate started to ask me how I felt in this situation. I told them how I felt in that situation, and they're like, and then they used that to go in on me and start to use a bit of a Socratic method to try to push me into me taking actions that involve my own will, and kind of tried to push a specific narrative, a very moralizing narrative, which you start to see a lot of in the Amberlynn Reid world, a lot of like stuff about responsibility and stuff like that, which is valid, but it's not the complete story, nor is it possibly the most effective place to start from. And that started to upset me, that I was being pushed from one little statement I said about my own emotions and my own feelings toward a situation. I was starting to be pushed into something that was against my own agency, and something that I felt like was actually opposing me in a way, even though the person who was saying it didn't feel that way, and they had all the best intentions in the world, all the right things, everything gets me. They love me, and I know that. But the way it came off was wrong, because they went from an opinion straight to a conclusion and trying to impose an idea, and assuming that because of that opinion that I was going to buy into their idea straight away. Now, it makes you more likely, but more likely is not the same as certain. Now we get into our next place that we could start from, which is positions. Positions is where things are in the mind of the other party and where they want to be, where they kind of have an idea of what matters to them, things like that. Think of it as sort of like a map showing, okay, I'm here, this is here, the past is here, the future is here. It's kind of a map. And then that is sort of gives you an idea of how the other person is thinking about their situation, and the different places they can be and the different places that they might want to go. And this gives you a little bit more clarity, because then if you see that a particular position or a particular place where you want to take them is not in the picture of their map, that kind of tells you, okay, I need to kind of adjust my own spatial model and my own space and orientation to the world of their world. So in Amberlynn Reid's case, you see that sort of her, again, I'm going to go back to this situation with her not being able to visit her mom. So she sees somewhere off in the periphery of her map, being able to get on a plane or whatever, or generally get to see her mom. Then she sees herself somewhere else in a position that is on the direct opposite side of that plane. So you know these positions here. But what you don't want to do from positions is, now that you know, okay, this is sort of the realm of possibilities they have and what they're seeing, you don't want to presume what their direction is going to be. You don't want to presume that the way they're going to get from this point down here to this point up here is straight across. You also don't want to presume that it's going to be around, up, back down, and this way. You don't want to presume that it's going around this way, when it could be that they want to go sideways, then up, then right. You get what I'm saying. And that brings us to intentions and directions. Intentions are where they want to go, and directions are how they are going there. Which way, which direction are they headed on that plot that we have? Which direction are they going? Are they going toward a particular thing? Are they going away from a thing? And the intentions are where they want to go. So the real magic happens when you can look at somebody's direction and you can look at their intention, their intended direction, and you can see which way they would want to go from point A to point B, what their preferred option is. You don't want to force them to go the way that sounds best to you. You want to get them into a better position of the way they want to go. So if you see somebody, so you, in an ideal world, you have a moving object. You have something that's sort of moving somewhere, that's not just stuck somewhere. When something's kind of stuck somewhere, that's a bit more difficult. But if you're actually going somewhere, if you have a moving object, you can start to reposition it. You can know where it's going and what place they are actually going versus where they want to be going as far as what they've expressed and in what manner they want to do it. And you kind of nudge these things over gently. You don't like push it in. You don't like take this as like the, I guess I'm gonna use the term, the more coercive model is okay, this thing is moving in this direction here, we're in this horizontal direction, we think we need to be moving in this diagonal direction. I'm just gonna say, okay, we have to push it over into this direction, push it over to this direction, just skewer over this way. No. If there is a plan that would involve a more gradual shifting in a collaborative manner, that's what you want to be doing. And something that's in line with the plan they want to go to. And ideally, if you are somebody who is in the situation with the person, you want to be involved in forming those intentions and with them in these directions, letting them make these decisions instead of saying, okay, this is the only plan. The only plan for you is go straight up to this goal by reducing your diet down to kale and chia seeds. I just pulled those examples out because a pastor I listen to actually uses kale and chia seeds as like an illustration of something related to diets in one of his sermons. But it's kind of analogous to some of the things we've heard in the Amber verse about her needing to really, really more fully deprive herself, when she may want to go a somewhat different route that may have a bit more twists and turns, but she can still be guided to the place where she wants to go. So you sort of start to gradually move things like that, and ideally after knowing the full picture, after working with the person. Obviously, again, as I've said in prior videos, we don't have the luxury of being in Amberlynn Reid's home. But if you do, there are some things you can do to collaboratively plan and start out with a lot of understanding and just listening to the direction they want to go and which ways of adjusting that direction gradually are the best ways. So that really, the last part there is the difference between a coercive approach, meaning that massive draw over onto this one uniform line, versus the cooperative approach, the approach that would result in the least resistance from the other party, really shows. And I'm going to give you an example from her What I Ate Today video. So you kind of have two different directions you can take it from. You have the food that she was eating. You can kind of see the direction she was going with the meal in the morning, that she wants to have foods that are familiar to her, and that she wants to have them in certain quantities and certain ways that are lower in calories. That's the direction she's going to. That direction is in fact reasonably calculated to get her to her end objective of losing the weight. But then you start to see some deviations. The second meal, the lunch, it's Subway, which a lot of us, probably because of years of marketing campaigns involving one Jared Fogle, would think Subway is a healthier meal, but she kind of deviated at that time from her direction. Maybe that's why she chose it. And that's the kind of point where you're like, okay, we can make some gradual adjustments. Instead of this bigger sandwich, you can have a smaller sandwich of a similar type. Maybe reduce down to one bag of chips, maybe one cookie, or do something at home that might be even less, that would be a similar type of sandwich that would have less calories than what you get at Subway anyway. And that would be a way of falling in line with the direction that we're seeing from the first meal. It would be following that same direction instead of her deviating herself off of her own direction. And it's not a big jump, it's just a little adjustment that is in line with what her agency showed us she wanted to do. Of course, then you have this totally off track part of her having that papas mexicanas. And that's a bit tougher of a situation, but of course you can always sort of tweak things and adjust, kind of seeing, okay, she wants to go in this direction of having a flavor that's familiar to her, and she wants to have something that she can do on a relatively convenient basis. And this is, of course, where advanced planning, all that stuff, the initial part of planning the intentions and the directions in a collaborative manner comes into play. So those are the kinds of changes you want to mention, and you don't want to do them in a way, even if you're preaching a more subtle adjustment to things, you don't want to preach it in a way that makes it sound like it's some radical thing, like, you better change this, you better change that, because then, even though your adjustment is maybe 0.25 standard deviations, it'll make it feel like, and the counter reaction mentally will be like it's 1 to 2 standard deviations. All right, that was another kind of long video there. Hopefully you got something out of it, got a little bit more understanding of the way to kind of tweak Amberlynn Reid into the right direction. If you found any of this helpful, I would really appreciate it if you hit the like button. If you want to see more videos like this, please hit the subscribe button. All right, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you. And good luck with your Amberlynn Reid viewing, commenting, liking, and maybe subscribing or unsubscribing.